Yes, sir. Welcome in. It's What's the Spread? Miles on Sports here. Mr. Brad Thomas, the boys are back to break down some college football. My friend, we are 6 Saturdays away from the first college football game of the season.
Dude, how are we so close? Like, I was on a casino ship, on the cruise ship in the casino last week, and I was like, man, I honestly can't wait till college football's here. Like, we're going to be betting on it. We're going to be going on trips to go see games in like another week that we talk about the games that we're looking forward to. It's just super exciting. It's hard, like, this part of the year to see like the SEC media days and know that we're like so close, yet it just feels so far away.
And some great storylines that you and I have already
Oh my
talked
God,
about.
yes.
Up to this point, we have broken down our top 25, top 10, obviously, our top 10 non-conference games we're looking forward to. Today, we're going to break down our top 10 conference games we're looking forward to. And then going into next week, we're going to start breaking down the conference previews. But let's go ahead and get into it, man. Obviously, last week we broke down those non-conference games, primarily September. There's a couple sprinkled in October and November, but conference season is really the meat. Mostly October and November games. It's where seasons are decided. So what are we looking forward to this year? Let's go ahead and start with number 10. Lay it on me.
Number 10, Utah at Oregon. A strong possibility that Utah is undefeated. It's a good story, North versus South. It's not one that I'm like licking my chops about, but it's one where you should definitely have this circled on your calendar. There's also an opportunity for an Oregon look-ahead game the week before. So if we have the look-ahead game the week before Oregon stumbles, they're going to come more hungry to play Utah. So I just saw something pretty funny about this game too that made me a little bit more excited. Bo Nix was added to the Davey O'Brien watch list. I don't know in what world he's going to win the Davey O'Brien, but imagine giving Dan Lanning a good quarterback. We should have a good battle between Cam Rising and Bo Nix here.
Yeah, I think Bo Nix is good for 9 wins. We'll see how Cam Rising handles the expectations for this Utah team because there are, a lot of people picking Utah to make the playoff, and for good reason. They have a really good team coming into this year, but how do they handle the expectations? I say that because I've got this game on my list as well. It's one of 2 Utah games that I have on my list because they're one of the teams I'm going to be looking out for. And if I'm looking at the Pac-12, it's Utah, Oregon, and USC that I'm really looking at. This is a great late November game. It's the Pac-12 championship rematch from last year. We got this game twice last year. Utah wins both with the same strategy in the same game plan, which Oregon just had no answer for them. But those are going to be the teams to look out for in the Pac-12. All right, my number 10 is another rematch. The Big 12 championship game rematch. I've got Oklahoma State at Baylor on October 1st. And kind of what you were saying as far as, am I licking my chops for this game? Not too much, but looking at the Big 12, trying to see the teams that are going to make an impact, it's easy to see why Oklahoma State and Baylor could repeat their success from last year, and it's specifically because of the coaching. We know Oklahoma State has the consistency with Mike Gundy. Dave Aranda has shown that he can have consistency at Baylor, so it's very possible that these two could be the best defenses in the conference again, and that could set them up for success.
Yeah, I actually don't have that game on my list, but that makes total sense. You have two programs who are in the absolute right prime spot. Another great finish, which should be coming ahead. I think the reason I didn't have them on my list was because I have another Oklahoma State game that I'm really, really eager to, and I didn't want to, just abuse my list with Oklahoma State games.
Yeah, it was hard to pick between the Big 12 games, and looking at the Big 12, this is our last season of seeing the Big 12 in its current form.
It's wild.
It looks like we're going to keep Oklahoma and Texas for a couple of years, which I'm actually very excited about. I'm excited to watch the new Big 12 teams come in with Oklahoma and Texas still in the conference. It's going to be a conference to look out for when you're adding Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, and Houston. So it was kind of hard to pick between what games we're looking forward to, but plenty to choose from. All right, I'll go ahead and go with my number 9. Whenever this game happens, it's one of my favorite games of the year in the Big Ten, but it is a crossover matchup. We have Michigan at Iowa. Very low on a lot of people's list, but this is very sneaky. First of all, I've got to have a big game at Kinnick Stadium on my list because it's one of my favorite stadiums in the country. Iowa fans always bring it for the big game. And this being October 1st, one of the first big matchups in the Big Ten Conference. So definitely looking forward to that one. And it's a rematch of the Big Ten championship. So should see good things from those programs this year.
That's another one not on my list. But when I was, going through my list, I was like, I'm gonna have probably more SEC games, and you're gonna have more Big Ten games. I'm gonna go with
Right.
with my number 9. And this is a game that I will be in attendance, and I think I have this higher on my list than people have on theirs. Clemson at Wake Forest, and for me, it's because it's redemption for Wake Forest. Wake Forest season was going so well, and then Clemson they traveled to Clemson and just got absolutely annihilated up front. Well, what Wake Forest really wanted to focus on this offseason was making that offensive line better. They put up 24 points last season, which some people might be like, what big whoop. They put up 24 points without protecting the quarterback. If they get just a little bit of protection, I don't think it's going to be the 24 blowout that we saw last year. We'll see what happens, but this is a good game for me to, circle, because it's another possibility of 2 undefeated teams and 2 teams who want to be serious contenders in the ACC.
Yeah, this game was on my radar. Again, ACC is another conference, kind of trying to comb through which games we're excited for. Clemson, we obviously have our eyes on. Wake Forest is a big one, coming off the most successful season in school history, and they're returning a lot of pieces. So, you can definitely see some repeat success there. And as you said, bulking up, strengthening the offensive line should be huge for them. I'll have my eye on that one as well. All right, go ahead and give me your number 8.
My number 8, Big Ten, Wisconsin at Ohio State. Listen, Wisconsin lost a lot of players on defense this year, but one thing I wrote, Wisconsin's defense is always sound. We know what Ohio State's going to bring to the table this year. Will Wisconsin have the answer for Ohio State? It has been 8 straight games, since they have beat Ohio State, but this could be a Big Ten championship preview. And anytime you have a championship preview, I am licking my chops.
I'll tell you, poor Wisconsin with the scheduling. We haven't gone to Camp Randall since, I think, 2016. I don't know how they're coming to the shoe again, but here we go. And it's interesting that it's early September. This is usually about the time that we would play this crossover matchup. Not on my top 10, but obviously, I had my eyes on that one. I'll probably be at that game. It's going to be a big one. Wisconsin, obviously coming in as favorites in the West, as they do every year. So should be a fun one. All right. My number 8. This is where I've got another Utah game, USC at Utah, October 15th. And the reason I have this on my top 10 is because this is going to be a very interesting test for Lincoln Riley and company. When USC has their big games, especially here, we're looking at October 15th, about midway through the season, my eyes are going to be glued to the television screen when USC's got a big matchup, because you just can't take your eyes away from what's going on right now. This is quite possibly the biggest storyline. And then you add to the fact that USC is coming to the Big Ten. This brand is back. So I'm excited to be excited again for USC football. And it's a great test for Lincoln Riley, seeing as how Utah, college football playoff picks, Pac-12 championship, defending. They get this game at home, hoping it's a night game. So definitely excited for this one.
Dude, that is on my list. It's very high on my list. That could possibly be USC's first big test of the season. And just the storylines you talked about already. But listen, we have Cam Rising versus Caleb Williams. We have 2 guys who could be legitimate Heisman hopefuls. Lincoln Riley versus Wingham. There's so many storylines that you can honestly talk about. I am going to be all over this game, watching it, pretending that nothing else matters. It's a great game, and it's number 3 on my list, actually, if I want to give it away. That's how excited I am about this game. And, we can beat the dead horse about this, but I think both of us agree, and many agree, that Utah is a team that is going to be watched a lot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if Utah is going to be the team that is necessarily going to have the odds to match for everything, but they're definitely going to have a lot of eyeballs. And so this could be a very, very important game for both squads. And again, it's another team who has a look-ahead spot the game before. Sometimes those look-ahead spots trip you up. You don't want to lose 2 in a row.
A lot of expectations, and we've seen that it's been tricky to get through the Pac-12, like you said, because of those look-ahead games. There's a lot of those in the Pac-12, and that's why they've had trouble getting teams into the playoff in previous years. So we'll see how Utah handles those expectations. All right, what's next on your list?
Number 7, I have North Carolina State at Clemson. Rematch. Listen, this was a good game last season. This is a defensive battle with 2 quarterbacks who could, let's say DJE takes the leap to be the elite quarterback that his high school rating is. Then you have Devin Leary on the other side of the ball. And both teams, if both quarterbacks play well. They're playing well against top 20 defenses. NC State has a huge ceiling this year, returning something like 17 starters. They were a 9-win team last season. And then we have Clemson. We know what Clemson did. Clemson did it quietly last year because they lost the first game of the season to the best team in the country.
Right.
Man, this game has the potential to be blockbuster, college game day. We just need both teams to come in unscathed and playing really good football.
Yeah, and Clemson has been in our conversations because obviously, it's easy to forget about that program. But I think we're going to know really where Dabo is with this Clemson program after this game, especially because we're looking at an October 1st game. So it's early enough in the season where I think this is where we'll see where the Clemson program is at, because I think these are the two best teams, possibly add Miami to that list, Wake Forest there as well. But Clemson and NC State are my two top teams in the ACC going in. We'll, again, talk about expectations. We'll see how NC State handles that. We know Clemson can do it, and they get this game at home. So a lot on the line here.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing, too. And like we talk about expectation a lot. And, last year we were the victims of expectation early on with North Carolina. But what I love about NC State this year is they return a lot of players, just like North Carolina did, but they were winning. They had good defense. They had good quarterback play. They had everything that you already were set up with. Just a couple blemishes on their schedule last season. Building on that, they have a legitimate shot. They take down a couple of the top dogs in the ACC with maybe one loss. They could be a playoff team, which is huge to think about.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the ACC is wide open. And because the ACC is wide open, any team is wide open for that playoff spot. Because if you go 13-0 in the ACC, you're probably going to get a spot. Wake Forest was setting themselves up for that last year. Before they ended up losing a couple games. So the ACC, another conference to keep your eye on. My number 7, we already talked about it. It's Utah at Oregon. Excited for that one. Looking forward to a Pac-12 clash. I'll go right into my number 6. This is where I've got Ohio State at Penn State on October 29th. This matchup does usually fall on Halloween weekend. It is not a whiteout this year, and I'm very disappointed by that. If it was a whiteout, it would be much higher on my list. Probably looking at a 3:30 game here, but possibly a big noon kickoff. Is in the works as well. But listen, folks, it doesn't matter whether it's a whiteout or not, or Ohio State's at home. This is a great rivalry game. It's a great rivalry matchup. It's always two very talented teams when these two teams clash, and it's always a difficult test for Ohio State going into Happy Valley. So especially so late in the season, Ohio State could very well be undefeated. It's going to be a big test.
Yeah, that is not on my list, and I think primarily not on my list because Penn State didn't make it a whiteout game. Like, that would have been electric. I think the whiteout game, it probably gives them 2 extra points on a handicapping scale, which, I mean, let's say Ohio State rolls in there as a 7.5, and maybe it depends what Penn State we see this year, but 7.5 point favorite. I mean, you're already knocking 2 right there. All you need is one good hold, and anything can happen. So I'm excited for that game. It's just, when you think about Ohio State, Penn State, I don't want to watch it at noon. Like, I'm excited to watch it at noon, but I'm not like, oh my God, we got this primetime game between Ohio State, Penn State, wide out. It's going down. For my number 6, Red River rivalry, Oklahoma versus Texas. And now we have a kind of a switch in the two programs, mentality-wise. Like, we know that Oklahoma is going to have a strong offense, but they're bringing in a defensive-minded coach. Now we have Texas with an offensive-minded coach. It's kind of like roles reversed. We could have Quinn Ewers versus Dylan Gabriel. We could have 2 really big, strong, armed quarterbacks. And we have a Texas team who did very well in the transfer portal, and an Oklahoma team who I was shocked. I was shocked, Miles. You see a lot of players that left in the transfer portal. They're actually returning a ton of starters. And this game's always good, regardless of how many wins the other team has or how good the other team has. So 6 on my list. I'm excited to see if you have it on yours.
I mean, if you follow the podcast, you know this is one of my favorite games of the year. There's no doubt. You know I've got it on there. It's my number 4. I almost had it higher. We were talking about noon games or whatnot, but it's tradition to have Oklahoma Texas at noon. I can't remember the last time we had bad weather for this game. It is always good. And I just pulled up the results. This is about the brands and the story, because there's always good storylines going into this game, no matter the record. Last year, Oklahoma wins 55-48. The year before, Oklahoma wins 53-45 in 4 overtimes. The year before that, Oklahoma beats Texas 34-27. It was a top 15 matchup that year. The year before that, 39-27. The year before that, Texas game-winning field goal 48-45. You get my drift. This is always a great game. It's always competitive, and it is definitely on my list.
Always spicy.
All right, top 5. I'll go first because this is where I've got NC State at Clemson. It's high on my list, number 5.
Yes.
I mean, looking at, I was going back and forth between this one, and I also have my eye on Miami at Clemson. But this one I think is going to, well, first of all, it's going to set the tone for the ACC conference season. And I think it's also going to decide the conference because the winner of this is going to represent that division in the championship game. And I think the winner of this game will win the conference and possibly have a playoff spot. So again, it's such a big game for Clemson to see really where they're at. So what's your number 5?
My number 5, this is my grab your popcorn game, Oklahoma State at Oklahoma. And this is, I don't think I was like super excited for this game until the media day. And it's just a victim of timing, like media day. We have Gundy talking about Oklahoma might be sharing secrets. Both teams are going to be locked and loaded with talent. 2 very good quarterbacks, 2 good receiving cores. This is a game where it has the, like, I didn't do the look ahead line because I want to be very surprised about this game. I want to see what the line is set when game time comes, because this line can be set at anywhere all the way November 19th. Like, you can realistically make a case depending on how each team's doing on who's the favorite and what the spread is.
Yeah, this one was not on my list, but it easily could have been my number 10. It's Bedlam. It easily could be a game or a deciding game for the Big 12 Conference. It's going to be interesting to see where Oklahoma is this year. I'm still high on them, but obviously it's Venables' first year. A lot going on there. Always a great game. So good pick. All right, what's number 4?
Number 4, Arkansas versus Texas A&M. Arlington, Texas. I tried so hard to go to this game last year. I didn't even put it on my schedule this year because I feel like for some reason I could never get the free tickets. But whatever, this game is going to be amazing. Why? Because this is like when Arkansas played Texas A&M last year, Arkansas won. But this was like in the middle of Texas's like rebrand. Texas had like a weird rebrand at the beginning of the season where they came in with this identity, and then that didn't work, and like they had to get better. They obviously got better, than knocking off Alabama later in the season. But listen, KJ Jefferson didn't even have a monster game against Texas A&M, and they won by double digits. And I think KJ Jefferson gets better this year. And people are talking about losing Treylon Burks. Like, I don't care about him losing Treylon Burks because he's getting better, right? You don't have to rely on your safety net as much. In college football, good quarterbacks make wide receivers look better. And if KJ Jefferson wants to be considered a good quarterback, he will make the rest of the players in that wide receiver room look better, where they won't feel the grunt of Burks. And then on the other side of the ball, Texas A&M, I think every game Texas A&M plays in the SEC will be a big game for them, because if you buy your team, you're going to have to live up to it, man. You're going to have to put up wins, not close games, not good performances, wins. So that's why it's my number 4. Sorry, I went a little long in the tooth about that.
No, this is a good pick. It's definitely one that I thought about. And it's very quietly one of the best games in the SEC every year. It's actually a very rare occurrence where they play neutral site games every year. So usually, or typically I don't like that, but this game always brings the fire. And as you said, it helps now that Arkansas is much more competitive. I do think KJ Jefferson takes a big step forward this year. And all eyes are on Texas A&M. There's no doubt about that. Every game that they play, every time that they're on TV, eyes are on them. So Jimbo's got to put it up. Obviously plenty of storylines to look at there, and should be a good SEC game. All right, so my number 4 here, as I said, Texas and Oklahoma. So I'll go into number 3, and my number 3 is going to be Michigan State at Michigan on October 29th. Actually, the same day that we get Ohio State, Penn State. So what a weekend in the Big Ten. Michigan State in Michigan is one of my favorite games every single year. But if you remember the game from last year, it was possibly, objectively, the best regular season game in college football for a reason. Michigan State, Kenneth Walker obviously had a big game, but what a showcase that was for those two programs. It's always more fun when they're at the top of their game. It's a great rivalry, and it's a reason why it's very high on my list, especially Michigan getting it at home this year. If you remember, we've had so many great moments in this rivalry, but the botched punt with Michigan State winning, and this rivalry has it all. We obviously got a great game last year, so I'm looking for the same thing this year. That's why I got it so high on my list.
Nice. Not on my list, but it's definitely a great game. I remember last year, I can't remember if I was on vacation or I had to go to an appointment, but I started watching the game on television, and I was like, I'm not turning this off. And I watched it on my phone traveling to wherever I was. I can't remember what it was, but it was, like you said, always a great game. My number 3 we talked about already. USC at Utah.
Yep, good pick.
Listen, the road runs through Utah for the Pac-12 now.
Yeah.
That is a statement that is real. USC, just because they load up a talent, load up with a new coach, doesn't mean they're already back. That is something you have to earn. My number 2, Michigan at Ohio State. Listen, on my birthday, I wrote must watch television. There was an 8-game winning streak Ohio State had hanging over Michigan's head, and Michigan came through with elite defense. And how will they replace guys like Aiden Hutchinson? How will Ohio State bounce back? They get this at home. There's so many what ifs, so many things that have me excited. And if you guys are following the podcast and follow me on Twitter and all that, you'll see that there's a couple players on both of these teams that I'm really high on, and I'll be doing segments on those players. It's just 2 totally different brands of football now that both are successful, both work. This is a rivalry now where it was always good, but now this is great. Yeah, it broke up the monotony of Ohio State always kicking Jim Harbaugh's behind.
Yeah, there's a reason why this is the most watched college football game every single year, and it just works.
Yes.
Fox gets it. They always put it at noon, and it works. I think about this game at least twice a day. And I haven't stopped thinking about the Ohio State-Michigan game from last year, of what I remember of it. Now, I have done a couple of rewatches. I mean, listen, it was heartbreaking as an Ohio State fan. I shed a few tears, more than a few. But the fact that the game was late November, it was snowing, it was in Ann Arbor. I mean, you could not have asked for a more epic stage for that game. And I'm telling you, coming back to that game this year, with Ohio State getting the home game, revenge on the mind, and Michigan is going to be much better than everyone's giving them credit for. Again, I talked about this in the preseason rankings. Michigan is going to be much better than people think. They
Agreed.
Lost a lot of pieces on defense, but they're going to get better on offense. That's going to be the key for them. So, yes, they may take a step back on defense, but if you can put up points, which I do think they will, I think watch out for Michigan this year. I think there's no reason why they can't repeat the success from last year. I think there's no reason why this game won't decide the East again, but this time Ohio State gets it at home. It is my number 1 game, so I'll just go ahead and put it out there. Of course it's my number 1 game. It's Ohio State and Michigan. Very happy to see it so high on your list. So I'll go ahead and complete my list before you get to your number 1. My number 2 game, almost had it number 1, by the way. Texas A&M, Alabama on October 8th. I mean, as just a objective college football fan, everyone's looking forward to this one, man. I mean, we have the biggest coaching beef that we've maybe ever seen, going back to the days of Woody and Bo at Ohio State, Michigan. I mean, Jimbo and Saban are just jabbing at each other. They're already in the ring. They're already putting up. It's fantastic. I love that we get it kind of early in the season here on October 8th. So much happening here. Bama going for the revenge at home, losing that game to A&M last year. A&M, so many expectations. How quickly will that best recruiting class make an impact? Woo! This one's going to be big, man. I know you're excited about it.
Is my number 1 game. Listen, so I had games already scheduled that I put I was going to work in, and I was like, you do one thing and you think about something else. Literally, I put my list and I submitted it. All these games I'm going to. And then I was like, all right, cool. Wait, I'm not working October 8th. Oh, crap, I'm working October 8th. I had never canceled something so bad. I'm sorry I can't work. I will be at this game. Miles, listen, the beef stage was set like months ago. And then and then again for freaking SEC
I
Media
know.
Day.
It's
I am looking
crazy.
so forward to this. Like, honestly, like, I'm excited for the players on the field, but can we just have a constant microphone on Jimbo and Saban throughout the entire game? Like, I want to hear hot mics. I want to hear all kinds of stuff, because to both of them, regardless of what they say, this is the most important game on their schedule, because you do not talk trash. You do not call someone out unless you are prepared to battle it out, brain versus brain.
This might turn into one of our best rivalries in college football, and it
Yes.
already has gotten that way. And, you know, it goes back to what we said last week, where college football is about the storylines. You know, yes, we get excited for the players on the field. Obviously, there's something to that, but the stories, the rivalries, the beefs, I mean, there's so much going on here. It's going to be a hell of a season, man. But that's going to be a hell of a game.
Dude, it's going to be so fun.
Can't wait.
Listen, dude, thanks for doing this, man. You always get my juices flowing talking football with you. There's nobody in this world that I like talking football with more than you. And I'm glad that we get to do it on the stage. Thanks, guys, for listening to What's the Spread podcast. Stay tuned, because we're going to have our conference previews coming up. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. Take care.